You're afraid. You're afraid of what people think of you. Most of us are. But have you noticed that it keeps getting worse the more time you spend online? Yeah, that's not clickbait either. I want to show you why. We're posting over 700 million social media posts per day, and we see an alarming 55% global increase in social anxiety since 1990. Coincidence? It's not as simple as we think. Turns out we're desperately torn between two strong desires in an invisible war in our inner world. To understand what those are, we first need to answer another question. So hold tight, because in the next 10 minutes, we're going to answer one of the most confusing behavior psychology questions you may never have put into words. Why are we afraid of what people think of us in public, but at the same time we feel compelled to share ourselves online? I need to show you this research I did into this bizarre experience we all have to some degree. It defies all common sense, at first. Look at this 2014 fMRI scan from studies done at the University of Manchester. This is your brain lighting up from stage fright, more or less. We can visually see what happens when some of us have to give a public presentation, when we experience performance anxiety, which is rooted in shame. What this shows is that when we experience shame, the amygdala, the fight-flight regions of the brain, are triggered. In the simplest definition, shame is a painful, complex emotion we experience when we negatively judge ourselves as unworthy of love. Shame says, I am bad. Guilt says, I did something bad. It's that shy, cowering, fearful, embarrassed, I wish I was invisible feeling we all know so well. So whenever shame is triggered, we can visually see that our fight-flight system is triggered. But what does that do to us? Watch this. In the first nanosecond, there's a massive cascade of responses in the body as the sympathetic nervous system comes online. Our heart rate goes way up, fast. Breathing becomes rapid, shallow. Your muscles tense and digestion stops. Tunnel vision and hypervigilance are activated. Your eyes dilated, quickly darting around looking for danger. Adrenaline and cortisol literally flash flood our bodies. Self-preservation becomes our only goal. It's life or death. So why is shame and life or death fight-flight triggered in performance anxiety? And what does this have to do with being online? We'll get to that. Stage fright isn't about the literal stage. It's about performance in front of people. Look at this definition of performance anxiety. Nervousness felt at appearing before an audience. In other words, feeling fear when others see us. When I was younger, I once challenged myself to do a poetry reading on stage. I knew I was terrified, but I wanted to prove to myself I could do it. So I got up there. But I choked. Literally. I was so afraid I couldn't breathe. I panicked. That lump in my throat never swallowed. I couldn't read the spotlit words in front of me. The crowd warmly encouraged me, and I got through it, but I cowered off stage, crouched in fear. Failure. But why did I panic? And why do some people seem to really love being on stage? Well, there are two answers here. For the person who isn't dominated by shame, I'll show you how that's possible at the end. Being seen isn't a trigger for their shame. But for the rest of us, we fall into one of two camps, inferiority complex or superiority complex. And according to Austrian psychotherapist Dr. Alfred Adler, a superiority complex is a cover-up for an inferiority complex. They are different sides of the same coin, and that coin is core shame. Some people may enjoy being seen because it helps them overcompensate and convince themselves they're not inferior. It helps them convince themselves they're good enough because they secretly already believe they aren't. I want to show you why social media isn't just something to do now. It's actually dangerous. After my poetry reading disaster, things got a lot worse for me. That shame is something that still lives with me to this day. But I realized I was obsessed with what people thought of me. 1600 years ago, the monk Saint Ephrem the Syrian already had me figured out, though. He said, "A man's neighbor has become his God. Every moment he seeks to please him. If he does wrong, he feels shame before him. If he does him an injury, he is afraid. Or if he does him some good, then he has spoiled that good by his thirst for praise." In simple terms, he's saying, We become slaves to other people's opinions. We avoid doing anything that might make them judge us negatively. And when we do something good, we ruin it by desperately hoping for their approval. Here's why that's a problem and how it relates to our egos. In psychoanalytical theory, the ego isn't confidence. It's the part of your mind that constantly compares you to others and judges whether you're good enough. And remember that definition of shame? Shame is a painful, complex emotion we experience when we negatively judge ourselves as unworthy of love. This is important. Shame is what we feel when ego judges we're not good enough. When we avoid something because we're afraid of being judged, we strengthen our ego's grip on us. Little by little, we become more cowardly, a habit of being fearful, more prideful, a habit of giving into the ego, and more trapped by inferiority complex, core shame. The ancients called this being in the grip of vice, locked in an unhealthy pattern of behavior. But there's one more thing at work here, where social media starts to become dangerous. As a global culture, we're spending incredible amounts of time online. Look at these shocking statistics from the research done by Local IQ. Look at this part specifically. Over 66,000 photos and videos shared on Instagram alone, 350,000 tweets sent, and over 2 million people active on Facebook in just 1 minute. 1 minute. This means that in one day, there are over 95 million Instagram posts alone. And that's just Instagram. And this is what happens when those 2 million Facebook users are actively seeking likes online. Think about the last time you posted something online. We all know the feeling. You post a picture of your travels, pets, food, friends, whatever, then you watch for likes. The system was gamified to make us crave those dopamine hits. But here's what's really happening to our psyches. Now we want to be seen online. We want that validating dopamine hit. Every time we post carefully curated content, hoping for likes and that external validation, we're orienting our egos to depend on other people's judgment of us. It's essentially digital people-pleasing. We're conditioning ourselves to seek external validation to feel valuable. In the ancient world, this is called vainglory, an addiction to praise. And here's the invisible, vicious cycle living in all of us. We hope for validation, maybe online. Our increasingly fragile egos depend on it to avoid shame. Our egos begin to believe we're inherently inferior to others, so we fear negative judgment and avoid showing up authentically. We create masks and carefully curated, people-pleasing presentations of our life to show people. To reinforce feeling good enough, we repeat the cycle. In ancient terms, they would express the same cycle like this. The desire of vainglory, addiction to praise, strengthens pride, a pattern of egotism. Pride erodes healthy self-love based on inherent lovability. Cowardice takes root as we habitually, fearfully avoid shame. Vainglory and man-pleasing take root. To reinforce the feeling of being good enough, we repeat the cycle. The ancient cycle, invisibly churning inside us, is the engine making us crave more and more social media likes, while driving up our fear of being seen negatively in real life. The more we train our egos to depend on the fuel of controlled, carefully curated presentations of ourselves for validation of our worth, the more terrified we become of raw, unfiltered, authentic presentations of who we are, and the more addicted we become to sources of external validation. This whole performance is reinforcing core shame and inferiority complex in us, leading to not only decreased quality of life, but serious mental health problems, stress-related physical problems, and vices. So we understand the cycle now, but why exactly are we okay being judged online in our posts, but we're terrified of being judged in person? Here's the raw answer. In person, there's no edit button. There are no real filters and no delete button for those times we may do something imperfectly human. There's a vulnerability in that. We're forced to show up as our authentic selves. We may try to wear masks of affectation or style, and we may behaviorally mask with people-pleasing or fearful silence, but there's no escaping the rawness of being human and idiosyncratic in person. Online, we carefully curate what highlight reels we present to the world. Social media glorifies presenting a life devoid of all human authenticity. Online, we receive validation, not for our true, authentic selves, but for the false ego masks we carefully craft and present to the world. Here's the sad reality. Living life this way makes other humans our idol. It takes us further and further away from our imperfect, authentic selves and roots us in a perfectly false, egoic life driven by fear and praise of other people's opinions. So, I challenge you, and myself first, to practice the courageous and ancient humility found in vulnerability, showing up as our uncurated, raw, and lovably authentic, flawed selves. Because living humbly like this will combat the ego-building effects of social media's gamified-like system. And one day, we'll grow to feel no shame as we step onto the social stage in real life.